After recently picking up a stack of 8 new Super Nintendo games, I decided to take a look at them on the Retro Hunting Adventures. Stay tuned for part 1 after these introductory words from our good friend MegaManFan.
Yo, this is MegaManFan, and you need to rock and or roll on over to Mr. MegaManFan's YouTube channel, because it's all that rush to make it happen. Peace!
I'm your host, Mr. MegaManFan, and our first entry this week is SNK's Fatal Fury King of Fighters, first released in arcades in 1991, ported by Takara to Super Nintendo, or as it's known in Japan, the Super Famicom, where it was first released in 1992, followed by a localization for North America in 1993. Now, they did change a few things from the original arcade version to make it work on home consoles. The 2-lane system was dropped in favor of a 1-lane plane. The 2-on-1 battles are gone. The arm wrestling bonus rounds are replaced by new bonus rounds with the main character punching flying tires. And in the game's versus mode, all of the CPU-controlled characters are playable, albeit only on the second player's side. Players could also pick the same main character in alternating colors. Now, you may be surprised to hear this, but this is actually my first time playing the original Fatal Fury King of Fighters. There were no Neo Geo arcade cabs around me when I was growing up that I could play this on, and the international version of the Neo Geo Mini that I bought does not include Fatal Fury King of Fighters either. That was only included on the Christmas edition, the Samurai Showdown edition, and the Kuroko edition. So I am genuinely going into this blind. That may become obvious from the gameplay footage. But this game is considered to be a classic of both SNK and the Super Nintendo, so do not judge my inability to figure out the moves and combos as any reflection on the quality of this game. Due to its popularity, it is one of the more affordable Super Nintendo games you can pick up, affordable being relative, of course, because you won't get it for less than $11, but that's certainly cheap compared to the very high end of Super Nintendo games, and even fair compared to the average of Super Nintendo games, so don't be afraid to add Fatal Fury to your collection. For those of you who play Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, this is also where the character Terry Bogard made his debut in video games, so there is some very important video game series history to be had in the Fatal Fury series. If you were wondering who Terry Bogard is, now you know. And hopefully at some point they will release an amiibo based on Terry Bogard. I haven't seen any pre-orders go up for that, but he was a downloadable character all the way back in November of last year, so they've said they're going to make amiibos for all DLC, and I have to think that means a Terry Bogard one is coming, and will probably be highly desirable based on the long-running Fatal Fury series. In fact, Fatal Fury spun off the King of Fighters tournament, which you probably could have guessed from the introductory scroll, so this legacy is very deep in gaming. It rivals series like Mortal Kombat, Street Fighter, etc. So do yourself a favor, check out Fatal Fury, especially if you can find a copy for a low price. Next up on my 8 pickups for Super Nintendo is Top Gear, which you may be surprised to know has nothing to do with the series of the same name. In fact, it doesn't even have the same name in Japan. It was called Top Racer there. It was the first in the Top Gear franchise though, and one of the first racing games released on Super Nintendo, and was eventually ported to both Commodore Amiga and Sega Mega Drive, so it's not exclusive to Super Nintendo by any means, way, shape, or form. In fact, it was even released as a multi-cart for the Evercade by Pico Interactive just this year. So you have many options to play Top Gear. As you might have guessed, it's a racing game. What a shocker, I know, right? You choose from one of 4 different cars, one of 4 different layouts, a choice between automatic or manual transmission, and you have up to 3 nitro boosters that you can use as you're driving around the track. With no instructions, I didn't even know which button to use to accelerate, and it took me a little while to get going as a result. So my lap time is not going to be that great. The visuals, they're okay. We've got some scrolling, scaling, and parallax from the mountains in the background to the track in the foreground. It's not the most ambitious, but it's serviceable. I would say the music is the same. It's certainly not going to be overwhelming me as to, my God, I want to play this on loop forever, but it doesn't annoy me or irritate me in any way, so I'll give credit where it's due to the composer, who is Barry Leach. Apparently, he was so beloved that when they made this game in Brazil as a series called Horizon Chase World Tour, they actually brought him in just to compose the music for that version. So, good on you, Barry. Even if this isn't my favorite soundtrack, it's clearly somebody's favorite. Now, apparently I forgot to make a pit stop here, so I'm running out of fuel, and there's nothing I can do about it. I'm gonna be out of gas before I can get to the pit row to refill. So this gameplay is not going to last very long. I guess Top Gear gets a pass. I don't hate it. I don't love it. It's just okay. It was a rather affordable pickup. In most cases, you should be able to find it for under $10, maybe even less if you get it from a thrift or a flea market, so good luck out there. It would be fair to say that the most well-known and arguably most significant of the 8 Super Nintendo games that I picked up is Sonic Blast Man. It started out as an arcade game in 1991, came to home consoles a year later, but it had drastically different gameplay, and I will tell you what the differences are based on the wiki entry, which we all hope is accurate. The arcade version had both enemies and targets you had to hit. In order to win, each target had a set amount of resistance, and once that resistance was depleted, the enemy was defeated. To hit the target, the game featured a pair of gloves and a mechanical punch pad that rose up when it was time to do an attack. The player must wear the gloves and punch the pad strongly enough to deal damage, but only 3 hits are allowed. Now, clearly, they couldn't do any of that without a plethora of accessories for a Super Nintendo or a Super Famicom, so all of that was dropped. The SNES version is instead a beat-em-up game where Sonic Blast Man must save the Earth from a diverse amount of evil creatures, from street gangs and terrorists to aliens and robots, and finally, an evil clone of himself under the name of Heavy Blast Man. The fight starts on a construction site in Earth and eventually winds up in outer space. Now, one of the things that really gets to me about Sonic Blast Man is he has a spin attack move, but when he does it, he gets dizzy and falls down. What kind of superhero is Sonic Blast Man that his special move makes him dizzy and incapacitates him? It just reminds me of Angry Video Game Nerd's complaints about Lester the Unlikely, where he gets scared of everything, gets dizzy, falls down all the time, runs away from enemies. It's like, okay, are you a hero or are you not? I get that Lester the Unlikely was an unlikely hero and supposed to be a wimp, but this guy is legitimately dressed like a costumed superhero, is doing special moves just by me hitting the punch button. He's picking people up and tossing them around with ease. So why does his spin attack move make him want to fall over? Is he unprepared for Earth's gravity? Is the centrifugal force too much for him? He can't overcome it? Do a little training first, Sonic Blast Man. Don't be such a wuss. I can spin around without falling down and getting dizzy, and I'm not even a superhero. Come on, man. What's wrong with you? I know the wiki entry says this is a construction site, but for all my money, I would say it's a junkyard. In fact, I see a well mashed up car in the background, a badly damaged motorcycle sitting next to it. I feel like this is a salvage yard where people are coming to get spare parts to repair their vehicles. Call it a construction site if you want to, but the mere presence of a chain link fence doesn't convince me of that. I feel like it's a junkyard or a storage yard or a salvage yard of some kind. And then we wander into an area with barrels where you can destroy them and collect power-ups and extra life. And if I was better at the game, I probably wouldn't need either of those things, but once again, first time playing Sonic Blast Man, so you know how that goes. I'm not going to be an expert at it, but I do find, despite my complaints about the spinning making him dizzy, that it actually is not bad. In fact, I played this for a lot longer than I expected to, which helped necessitate splitting up this episode into 2 parts. So, you're asking yourself, what is it going to cost me if I want to play Sonic Blast Man in a physical cartridge instead of through emulation or an SD card on an EverDrive? Well, got some bad news for you. Loose, this game goes for almost $25, and it's consistently gone up over the last decade from under 10 to over 20, so it's not getting any cheaper, and it's going to keep going up, I presume, based on those numbers. And woe betide to those of you who want the sequel, Sonic Blast Man 2. That's even worse, and by worse I mean way worse. We're talking $110 loose. If you're insane enough to want it complete, $360. If you're really freaking insane and you want it shrink wrapped and sealed, $600. I can't fathom that. And there are so many fake shrink wraps right now being sold on sites like eBay. I would strongly advise against it. I mean, if you're a scumbag seller and you buy a complete copy for $350 and take it to a shrink wrap machine and shrink wrap it yourself, that's $250 pure profit. It's so easy for that to be faked. It's just shrink wrap. You can make it yourself. I've done it at computer stores when I was in college. We used to shrink wrap the games that we got so that people wouldn't tamper with them. It was a security measure for us, but it just showed me that anybody can do it. It's not that hard to do. The only thing you have to worry about is burning your fingers on the machine, because the surface of the shrink wrap machine gets really hot. And if you leave it on there for too long, you can tear the shrink wrap. So you got to have enough of it around the box you're sealing. You got to watch your fingers when you're using the damn thing. Other than that, you can make shrink wrap. So please don't spend $600 on a sealed game unless you very, 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 very much trust the seller. You have an exorbitant amount of money to spend on things. Otherwise, I can't recommend it. I've got sealed games that I bought originally that I never even got around to opening. And even I don't know if I could say with 100% certainty to people, hey, this is a legitimate seal. I mean, I could take pictures of things called Y-folds, because some shrink wrap games, when they're manufactured, have creases in certain places the way they were wrapped around the cover. So, I mean, I guess if you took enough photos and showed people the item, you could sort of prove it, but at the same time, I just told you that it's very easy to fake, so I don't know. The whole idea of keeping things shrink wrapped is kind of anathema to me anyway. If I had a game like Sonic Blast Man, I'd want to play it. I wouldn't want to keep it in the shrink wrap just because of collector's value. I would want to actually enjoy the game. And I do find it to be an enjoyable game. It's a side-scrolling belt action beat 'em up that has some good aspects to it, and I feel like the more I play it, the better I'll get over time. I just wish Sonic Blastman didn't get dizzy doing his special move, but other than that, $25 well spent. Now this last pickup for the first half of the video makes me feel like a world-class idiot, so feel free to pwn me in the comments section because I once told you that I couldn't understand why Exhaust Heat wasn't released in North America. Guess what? It was, but it was renamed for North America as F1 Rock Race of Champions. And this is the sequel, F1 Rock 2, which in Japan was known as Exhaust Heat 2. So, I'm stupid. I should have known that Exhaust Heat would come out in North America. Now, this game doesn't remind me of Exhaust Heat at all. It actually reminds me of F-Zero, particularly the way that you pinball around the track. If you are going too fast and hit one of the walls, you will bounce from one side to the other. Bing, 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 just like that. So if you've played F-Zero, you know what this is all about. You're going to have to slow way the hell down going around these turns, or you're in for a bad time, as Sans would say. But I do appreciate that it's a familiar racing concept as a player of F-Zero. If they aren't using the same engine, they're definitely cribbing notes from each other in terms of the control scheme. So I like it. I will get some very good enjoyment out of it going forward, but I don't know that I'm representing it very well just because I was not prepared for the fact it was going to be an F-Zero clone or F-Zero series stylistic derivative. I think it's a good game. I just think I'm an idiot for not knowing Exhaust Heat came out in North America along with its sequel. So, learn from my mistakes. I'm Mr. MegaManFan. This is part 1 of the Super Nintendo pickups. Stay tuned for part 2.